Yeah, topics that came to mind for me: service work and trying to be helpful to other people, being of service to other people. Those have been a big part of my recovery. To give a bit of my story, before I came to this fellowship, I had gotten sober in AA. One of the suggestions that I heard very frequently there was to get into service work, to take on some sort of service position. We don't have There's a lot more that can be done in a face-to-face meeting, that we don't necessarily have in our voice meetings here. But in a face-to-face meeting, you can be a treasurer, you can be the secretary, you can lead the meetings, you can set up the meetings, you can make the coffee, you can be a greeter for the people that show up, you can be a representative to like the general service, a service representative for the group. What else is there? There's probably other things that I'm forgetting. Well, like my group has like a speaker getter, someone who finds a speaker for each month, and yeah, there's just lots of service opportunities for people, and it's really helpful to the new people to show up to like plug into one of these little jobs. And it was a turning point for me. And I mean, I've told the story a few times because it's an example of like a suggestion that you hear suggestion that I heard that didn't make any sense to me. Well, the suggestion was because I was going to this group every week and they needed a coffee maker because the old one had quit. And one of the guys who'd been around for a while they said, hey, one of you new people here, why don't you take on, this is a good opportunity, be a coffee maker for the group, it'll help you stay sober. I thought, bullshit. That doesn't make any sense. What does making coffee have to do with learning to live life in recovery? But the thing was, I was willing to help out with the group, so I took on the job and I started making coffee, and it just had so many effects on my life that I wasn't expecting. I was showing up to the meeting early. I was talking with other people who were showing up early. They were seeing I was more serious about recovery, so they were giving me their phone numbers. And then someone asked me to speak to their group, and I just felt like I was connected. I felt like I was a part of the group. I'd stopped feeling like an outsider, kind of looking in on the group, and started feeling like I was part of the group. And it turned out to be a turning point in my recovery. And I've heard it suggested, like always having a good idea to always have some sort of service work that you're doing. So, and for some people that means like a service position in a group, but it can also mean just being committed to being helpful to other people, whether that's by making phone calls to other people or just, greeting new people that show up to the meeting or, watching for newcomers posting to the forum and welcoming them. There's a lot of ways of being of service without necessarily having a service position. But so I continued on that route, and for most of my time in recovery have had one service position or another. After that coffee maker job, I was a speaker getter, and then I was a treasurer for another group, and then I was the service representative and was going to the district meetings for a while, and then they asked me to be the one that was like in charge of meeting lists. So I did that for a couple of years, and that has just been this is part of my program. It was like one piece of my program is like what service work am I doing, or what service position do I have? Because I've found that it has a lot of benefits that I couldn't have guessed at right away. I mentioned the ones that were really important to me as a newcomer, but there are a lot of benefits that I get now. I'm an introvert. I don't easily reach out to other people, but when I'm involved with service work, that gives me the reason and the motivation to be like really reaching out to people and making connections, making phone calls, and being more connected to the fellowship. And through that work, like I get a lot of reminders of why people come to our fellowship in the first place. Reminds me of where I came from and how much I don't want to end up back there. So that is a really important piece of my recovery. It also helps with I believe it helps with my spirituality. I believe that higher power flows into my life much more readily when it's flowing back out to other people. So, I kind of picture it like as a pipe, maybe, where if I want water to come in, and all I do is unscrew one, one cap off one end of the pipe, some water will come in, but that will be it. If I unscrew a cap off the other end and it's just open on both ends, then water can just like keep on coming through, you know? I don't know. So that's one analogy that I have in mind with like and with tapping higher power and how important it is to let it flow back out to other people. What are the benefits? Well, I definitely have struggled with, selfishness, being wrapped up in my own head, being overly concerned with just like how I'm affected and not looking at how other people are affected and stuff. But regularly trying to be of service, setting my stuff aside and just listening to other people, trying to be helpful in whatever ways that I can, helps me get out of my own head, helps me get out of my own selfishness. It helps me to be like what I think of as more of a whole human being. I think it's just natural and healthy. Or, like they say, human beings are a social animal, or, we're meant to have connection to other people and rely on other people and have a flow of give and take with other people. When I was stuck in gaming, when I was pouring dozens of hours per week into gaming and, trying to stuff as much of that into my schedule as I could. That took someone who was an introvert and turned them into like a recluse, I avoided social situations. I felt uncomfortable talking with people, and I was out of touch with family. I was out of touch with old friends, kind of minimizing time even in my own romantic relationship. So when I stopped gaming, I needed to do things to turn that around. It's not enough to just stop playing the game because, it's just so easy for me who was stuck in that rut for so many years to just turn to watching videos or doing other things on the computer or other things with electronics that just, continue to isolate me and continue to distract me from living my life. So I definitely needed ways to help me get out of myself and connect to other people. Yeah, there's been plenty of service opportunities for me in CGAA. We don't have as many like service positions in our group as there would be in a face-to-face meeting, but we also have other service levels in CGAA. There's like the General Service Conference where people get together to discuss things like how we're setting up our website or literature that we're making and that sort of thing. And there's also a literature committee where people are like writing things up and contributing to literature that we're trying to get together for CGAA. And we have those business meetings very regularly, like almost every Sunday, or second, third, and fourth Sundays of every month. Yeah, I've made a habit of going to most of those and definitely appreciate the service opportunities that are available there and how it helps me stay connected. Yeah, trying to think of what more there might be to say if I'm going to talk for half an hour. Well, I was thinking of also talking about being of service to others through just one-on-one rather than like service work within the group, which has also been big for me. I was encouraged by my sponsor very early on to just be helpful in whatever little ways that I could. Because at first, I was very insecure in how I might be able to help other people. And so I was encouraged to just do little things. Like in my other fellowship in AA, I was encouraged to, if I could just give someone a ride to a meeting, that could be very helpful. Or just introducing myself to a newcomer and shaking someone's hand and saying, welcome, or giving them my phone number, even if they never call me, that sort of warmth and welcome can really help newcomers. So I didn't need to know, I didn't need to start sponsoring people right away to be of help to others. I could be helpful by listening to other people, but I didn't realize it at the time, but I was helping people by accepting their help too. That's not something that I realized at first. I thought, I felt a little bit, what's the word? I didn't feel quite right. Like I had never liked accepting help in my life. So I definitely felt out of sorts, like asking for people for help and feeling like it was one way, like that I was bringing my problems to them and they were just listening to me and I wasn't like listening to their problems or trying to help them. I worried about it being one-sided sometimes, but I can see now that through my own experiences and trying to be helpful to others, or sponsoring other people, or helping people, make their way through the steps, just how helpful that is to me. And yeah, my sponsor. Well, I've had two sponsors, and yeah, both of them have been great. Both of them set really good examples for me in like, sponsorship because I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but I was worried about the idea of sponsoring other people at first. I was, worried that people would bring issues to me that I would have no idea how to handle, or they would bring problems to me that I also had, but, didn't know how to deal. Like I wasn't dealing with my own problems well, so it didn't seem right that I could be that, I just try to sponsor someone who has the same problems when I don't have it all figured out myself yet. But yeah, the style that my two sponsors had helped me relax around that, and that no matter what problem any of us has, like it can always be brought back to basics. It can always be brought back to, well, just talking about anything out loud can help people straighten, get some clarity in their own head. So just encouraging people to talk is helpful. Asking questions is helpful. Bring it back to basics is, there's something needs to be accepted here. Basics like self-care. I can't tell you how many times I've struggled or I've been talking to someone else who is struggling and, come to find out they haven't been sleeping well the last week or longer, they haven't been sleeping well. And so their head's in a very bad space because of that. And that, just realizing that, helping people remember basic self-care and that, those sort of things need to come first. You put those things first, then the other things can become much easier to deal with. All right, those are things that my sponsor always did for me. He brings it back to self-care. He brings it back to, acceptance. He asked me, and then rather than telling me, like, I think you should do this and you should do that, before he makes any suggestions, he always asks me the question, okay, so what are some of the tools or the programs that can be used here? And I like that approach because, like, he's reminding me that I don't need to have answers handed to me from outside myself. Like, I know what a lot of the tools are. And if I just stop and remember what they are and consider which ones can be applied to the situation that I'm in, I'm always going to find at least one or two, or sometimes three or more tools that I could put to use in that situation. So, I try to do similar things with people I sponsor. Listen, ask questions, bring it back to basics. Sometimes I do have like personal experience with something that someone else is going through, and I'm happy to share that experience. And I do that sometimes. It's not the first thing that I have to do. I like going through those paces before that. That my sponsor has always used for me. That has worked so well for me. Let's see. I'm trying to think what other parts of being of service to other has been helpful to me. Yeah, I don't know if I already said this or not, but being helpful to others does not have to be in a form of sponsorship. I mean, a sponsor can help the sponsor, and the sponsor can help the sponsor just by working together. Any of us could be helpful to anyone else just by being there to listen or to reach out to each other. And I can tell you that a lot of people have no idea how much they're helping other people when they're sharing and leading. I just know when I was new, both in AA and in the fellowship, I paid very close attention to what people were sharing. I was pretty desperate to find some answers. I was desperate to find some things that were helping people out. I was desperate to find out how you overcome these urges to game, how you deal with stress. You're not numbing out in the games for several hours. What else you do for fun. So people sharing what has worked for them was huge. Also, the hope that I got hearing people share the changes that they've been through, even if it was just small baby step changes in their early recovery, just hearing that, things do get better. They get better in the first month and then things get better in the next few months. And over the course of the first year, things get better. And I mean, things don't get perfect, but if you're watching for them, you can see these changes, appreciate these little changes that do make things easier, that do allow me to think more clearly, feel better about myself, have less negative thinking and more positive thinking, more motivation, more energy, more perspective, which I appreciate, And definitely all this work helps me keep that perspective too. I think if I just went off on my own, it would be so easy for me to lose sight of the changes that I've already been through and the little changes that I'm continuing to make, the little bits of progress that I'm continuing to make. by talking to other people and remembering where I used to be and how my head used to be, like what sort of thinking patterns I used to have that allows me to realize, wow, that has changed. I used to think that way all the time. Now I think that way, some of the time, and a lot of times I catch myself when I'm thinking that way and correct it, or choose to think of it in a different way. Like, I don't know, some of the biggest things with that are around like victimization, like feeling powerless and blaming other people or blaming circumstances for problems that I have. Because it used to be that I took, little to no responsibility for like a lot of the issues I was dealing with. Through the work that I did in recovery, learning to take responsibility for myself, learning to see the options that I had in front of me, and even if none of them appealed to me, at least I can consider the different options and choose which the better one or whichever one seemed like it was the next right thing to do. With practice, that became more of a way of being for me. To get out of feeling stuck, get out of feeling victimized, to realize there's always multiple options and I do have the power of choice in those situations. There is always things that I can do that can help. Yeah, so I was saying that, there's been some very gradual change in that direction. That if I was just trying to do it on my own, either I would not get very far or I wouldn't necessarily see and appreciate the progress that I've made. And if I don't see and appreciate the progress that I made, it's very easy for me to get discouraged and to give up and say, what's the use? I'm still having these problems. I've been trying to change things, but I'm still having some of the same problems. So I give up, F it. Back to the game. So yeah, where I'm trying to get to with this is that I don't lose sight of that because of, the regular contact that I have with other people here in the meetings and, one-on-one talking with people on the phone or people I sponsor helps me keep things in perspective. I got one last thing that I had in mind that I wanted to talk about, related to that last thing. It's being bits of progress that I've made and how that helps me to, continue to have the motivation to keep moving forward. Is that used to be a big problem for me was, I didn't realize it at the time, but I kept bringing things to my sponsor and telling him what I was wrestling with, and over again he would tell me that I was being very hard on myself. That sure I had a long way to go, but it doesn't help to be hard on myself. It doesn't help to expect too much too fast, and it does help to really stop to look at the bits of progress that I've already made. That has become an important part of my recovery. We talk often about gratitude and how important it is, and people often talk about things that we have to be grateful, which include, the people in our lives, or the health that we have, or that we have food to eat and a roof over our heads, and things like that, or opportunities that have come our way. But those are all great. I always visit, if I'm doing a gratitude list, I'm always sure to look at those things. And another thing I'm always make a point of looking at is bits of progress that I've made. I want to see those and appreciate those so that I continue to have motivation and energy to, keep putting one foot in front of the other and, putting together days of free time, overcoming bit by bit, trying to overcome some of the patterns and, dysfunctional thinking that I had that drove me into